As India economy grows, as it becomes stronger, as it climbs up the ladder on global hierarchy, one would think it's less vulnerable and more resilient to global shocks, global risks. But is that happening? That's the big topic of discussion here at the World Economic Forum. My panel today, PR Ramesh, Chairman Deloitte, Rajat M, MD Asian Development Bank, and Sandeep Naik, MD General Atlantic. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll start with you, Rajat. Tell me, are we decoupled or are we very closely still exposed to global shocks, global risks?
Decoupling was always a myth, is a myth, and will remain a myth. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you want the benefits of global integration and when things don't go well, you'll decouple. No, we're not decoupled. As a matter of fact, as you'd expect. India is now very integrated with the global economy, but it is now more integrated, I would say, with the Asian economies. It's not as dependent only on Euro and US as it was before, but certainly part of the global scene and therefore affected by it, for better and for worse.
Ramesh, so there is a geopolitical risk in a So let's go down the economic route first. What is it? Is it our trading patterns, our excessive dependence on oil imports, which is today our biggest risk?
I would say there are two risks which are significant. One is the risk of inflow of funds not happening at the desired level. We are poised at such a level that we need significant investments, capital for growth, whether it's infrastructure or any sector for that matter. And that's why all these policy decisions on trying to open up and facilitate investment. And the second, as you rightly put, is oil, because energy drives the whole economy. And if oil prices go northwards or oil is not available, then it would cripple this economy. So these are the two big risks today. Otherwise, I think we are significantly resilient. Our financial markets are good. We've withstood global financial crisis. The third risk, if one may say, and whilst you said it is we are dependent on the Asian economies, in a services sector you are dependent on, and particularly in the technology services, you are dependent on US and the European markets, and more so in the financial services space or in the telecom space. And there one saw a decline in all the software companies, which were of showcase companies and bringing a lot of inbound foreign
exchange. Still under pressure.
They are under pressure, but they're seeing signs of the improvement at this point in time. But that is again, as I said, a mature sector. We look to it for, and it also transmitted a feeling of well-being. If these, whether it's the Infosys, Wipro, TCS did well, you believed that the country is doing well and the stock market, India shining, and therefore to that extent there is a third risk.
There is a third risk. So Sandeep, very important point brought in, and very important from a stock market point of view, from an investment cycle point of view. We are so dependent on foreign capital and FII inflows. Does that worry you? Look at the last 6 months, record FII inflows, and your markets zoom up 16 to 18%.
Yeah, no, let me just also address what my fellow panel member just mentioned. Are we decoupled? And going to your first question, the economies always are coupled, but to what degree? And some economies are coupled to a much bigger degree than I believe what India is. And if you roll back to when the economic crisis took place in 2008, and at that time we convinced ourselves we were decoupled. And the reason for that was our economy did not take the same kind of hit that some of the other economies took. And it's important to think why that was the case, because even though there were a lot of global shocks and macro indicators that were going wrong in the West, our story from a domestic standpoint was intact. We were still going ahead with the same kind of growth rates that we had. We were still going ahead with everything that we had planned to do. And as a result, it seemed like we were decoupled because the story on the ground was intact. What's happened now, if you fast forward in 2012, is that we have managed to upset that story ourselves, be it because of lack of reforms, lack of policy decisions, because of some of the other issues that we have faced with respect to the corruption and the scams. And what happens is when we ourselves are uncertain about the things on the ground, you feel that you're much more sensitive to the global shocks because the impact of that seems more pronounced now because of what the domestic issues are. If we can put our domestic issues and get solutions and put that growth back on track, you will once again feel that we are less coupled to what's happening globally. And I think that's an important point to make.
Yes, and there was, I think
it's important to, as you said, Sandeep, in 2008 we had much more space. We had much more fiscal space, we had policy space, we could do things, we could bring in investments. 2012 we don't have that much fiscal space, because
and that's
as a matter
our
of
own
fact, fiscal
doing,
deficit is high. I think the point is that India as an economy is a very large economy. External factors will always matter, but absolutely domestic issues, at this time the high inflation, delayed monsoon, issues on the reforms or the lack of it will all play in this. And this is why I think the issue is not that we are decoupled, because we never will be.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that we'll only be dependent on the external sector, because the domestic market is going to be very important.
Our resilience has gone down. Would you not agree that, I mean, if you look at the BRICS nations, India and Russia probably, in a study done a couple of years ago, still came about as the highest risk country, and that was simply because they said lack of governance, lack of reforms, and lack of internal strength, which exposes us to higher risk.
Which hopefully the reforms which have now been sort of at least announced and hopefully implemented will increase the resilience. So I think we just have to think of it in a very integrated ecosystem. We can't sort of, push one or the other.
I'll take you back to when I was at Davos this year for the World Economic Forum. Someone came up to me and said, you don't need an incredible India story. You just need a credible India story.
Right.
Very well put. I think that's very well put.
And that is very important, because right now what the investors as well as people sitting outside of India is saying, just show us a credible India story. We believe in everything you say, and we will come back in a big way. So when you talk about does the inflows and foreign direct investment worry you, I would say it worries me in the short term, but I know that we as a country are also the kind of people, when we are pushed to a corner, we come back and we are extremely resilient.
You still have that
belief
and hope
that we will come out of this. And structurally, I don't think much has changed. We still, all the structural positives that were intact and in place in India in 2008 are intact today. There are a couple of things that need to happen. We need to tackle the deficit issue that we have. We need to push through more reforms, and we need to improve the investment cycle, because for investors like us, the investment cycle really tells us the shape of the growth curve going forward, which is what investors will come and try to bank on. And I think that's what's currently missing.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.